books that I read in 2025. So this year, I actually only started tracking the books that I was reading since October. I only have October, November, December books that I read. Within those 3 months, I think I read 24 books, so quite a few. Obviously, the first books that I'm going to go into are the books I read in October. October was the first time that I ever curated a TBR according to the seasons. So horror, psychological thriller, psychological horror, folklore, and I thought I loved reading. Then I found out I really loved reading. It was a really good reading month. I think I read 11 books in total in October. So I'm just gonna go through the books that I read in October. First book, Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I actually read this book with a few friends as our book club book. We matched up the mood, a spooky book. This is a psychological thriller, psychological horror. As far as the story goes, it's separated into then and now. But it follows this girl whose father had just passed away, and she ends up inheriting this house, and they no longer live in, but this house was based off of a book that he had written. And in this book, the main character is one of the characters in the book. The house was creepy, but the thing is, the girl don't remember anything about living in this house, dude. She does not remember a thing, and her parents never answered any of her questions when she was younger. So as an adult who's now inherited this house, she is gonna go there and fix it up to sell, but also kind of try to figure out answers to the questions that she's had since she was young. It was an alright book. I didn't really think highly of it, but I will say I did actually get spooked. I was reading this in someone's house and I was genuinely scared and freaked out. The next book, Bunny by Mona Awad. Oh my gosh. Easily a 5-star book. Dude, these blind reflections are kind of driving me crazy. Sorry. Bunny by Mona Awad. 5 stars. And I loved it so much because it's a weird girl book. That is what it's classified as. And it is very weird. It is an odd book. It's kind of like a psychological thriller. Very psychological indeed. It's like an academia setting. And it follows a girl who kind of hates the clique. This clique of girls. And suddenly she's invited to hang out with them, and weird things start happening. And honestly, this is a book where I cannot say anything or else it's gonna ruin the book. It's a book that leaves so many loose ends, so many unanswered questions, which I kind of loved about it because I could kind of form my own ending about it. And actually, when I finished this book, I wanted to make a whole YouTube video sharing my theories and my thoughts. Yeah, it was really good. I know that there's a sequel to this book. It's called We Love You, Bunny, but I kind of don't want to read it because I kind of like the fact that there's unanswered questions in this book and just loose ends. So we'll see. If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This is a beautiful copy. It basically follows this group of kids who are in school. So it's also an academia book. But it follows these kids and they're all actors. And a crime happens. It's kind of testing to see whether or not their acting skills are up to par with the real world. And of course, there's love, romance, tragedy, heartbreak. I feel like I would have really enjoyed this book if I knew more about Shakespeare and Hamlet, because it has a lot of references. They are artsy theater kids. They're reenacting plays. It kind of questions how far do actors go with their work, and when does it stop on a stage as opposed to in real life? And I thought that was a very interesting question that came up in this book. I think I rated it maybe a 4. I really wanted to like it a lot because I do want to read The Secret History by Donna Tartt, I think it is. And this book has been likened to it, but I don't know, we'll see. The Patient by Jasper Dewitt. This was actually a book that I had years ago. I heard about it, I either read the book, I watched a movie, I watched a video review. I did not remember. All I remembered was the storyline, and I could not get it out of my head. And then this year, in October, the perfect time, because it is kind of like a psychological thriller, perfect time to discover it again. And I immediately bought it. It is a short book. I was so excited to read it. It is a story about a psychiatrist and his patient. And this patient is deemed like the uncurable patient in the hospital. It just follows the therapist relationship that he forms with his patient. He really believes that he can figure out what's wrong with him. And the patient is actually a young boy. So it makes the story more interesting. And you just see what happens. This is actually Reddit threads of an anonymous Redditor. I don't know what they're called. And Jasper Dewitt just took it and published it in a book. Listen, I'm just gonna say, if I were the author of this book, of these Reddit threads, I would switch up my story at the end and make it better, okay? But it's a real story, so you can't do it. The next book I read, my first classic, was Dracula by Bram Stoker. And it's a thick book. Like, this feels heavy. I do love this cover, though. I don't know if you can see it, but it's the Penguin English Library, and I think I want to start collecting books from that publishing house. Dracula obviously follows Dracula, and he is a vampire. And the book is kind of split up into multiple perspectives. It's all taking place around the same time, but through different characters in different settings. And throughout the book, all their stories kind of tie together. So it does make sense for all these perspectives. One of these characters, though, I'm pretty sure he loves to hear himself talk because he was so redundant. He was so redundant and so eloquent in his speech and so like flamboyant, and it just felt like I was reading a run-on sentence that was in the span of 3 whole pages. So that is one of the characters, and this book kind of took me a little while to get through. I will not lie. It was a good book. I feel like, me knowing nothing really about vampires and the vampire shows, movies, I really don't care, except I do love Twilight. Is it Twilight? I don't know, the one with Loca and Bella. I love those movies. They're hilarious. I love making fun of them. So it was nice, like, knowing how this vampire thing kind of happened, because this is like one of the earliest vampire stories. So then you kind of understand how vampires work, and I thought that was interesting. I think me explaining that book was a run-on sentence. Guys, I'm so sorry. These blinds are really messing with me. Okay, let's just keep going and pretend nothing's happening. The Butterfly Garden by Hutchison. This was also another book that, like The Patient, I constantly thought about. I forgot where I saw it, where I heard it, if I read it, and I found it out again, and I immediately bought it and had to read it. It's not really a spooky season type of book, I would say, but it is kind of like a thriller. It follows this girl who gets kidnapped and placed in this garden, and brother kidnapper is obsessed with butterflies, to a very obsessive, in a very obsessive masochist, abusive kind of way. So obviously that makes the story really interesting. But yeah, it follows the life of a butterfly in this garden and what it's like to live secluded and captured, to really live in a beautiful place, but also be a prisoner at the same time. I closed my blinds. The next book, Slewfoot by Brom. This is a 5-star book for me, dude. Oh my gosh. This kind of like changed my brain chemistry a little bit, I would say. This is like witchy folklore. This follows a girl, I think, were they like Puritans or something? Oh yeah, okay. This story follows a girl that is sold to marry a man who's a Puritan. And it kind of takes us through her life, her miserable life as a Puritan young woman, a young lady, except she's very free-spirited and stubborn and independent, and she does not like the Puritans, which I loved. I love characters like that, but they have like major consequences if you don't do what they say. It really sounded awful. She kind of lives in the woods out in the middle of nowhere with her husband, and her husband actually dies. And of course the Puritan church is trying to like control her and make her life decisions for her. A woman meant nothing to people back then, especially the Puritans, I guess. And my girl said, I can take care of this farm all by myself as a woman back in the olden days where woman meant nothing and could do nothing. And I love her for that. She decides that she can take care of the farm all by herself. It's kind of a sticky situation because she's never worked a farm before. She is in fact a lady, and her brother-in-law is actually evil and trying to steal the farm away from her. Kind of follows their battle between him trying to take the farm and her trying to fight her way to keep the farm. And then she encounters a mysterious creature in the woods, and everything really takes a turn from there. I am now curating my October TBR around witchy folklore and the Salem witch trials. The next book, horror movie by Paul Tremblay. Beautiful book. I also love the way it feels. It's a psychological thriller horror. I think I had really high hopes for this book. It is a very interesting book because it's actually written also in a then and now narrative, and it follows the script of a movie and how this movie is brought to life, and it really questions, again, kind of like if we were villains, it really questions the fact of how far do these actors go into their roles where maybe they cannot come back from that role and they're stuck with it forever. It's forever a part of them. And this book kind of delves into that question very deeply. The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. Okay, listen. I rate this book a 4.5 out of 5. I would rate it a 5 if I felt comfortable with what the author was saying. Part of me was like, does this author have the resources and the knowledge to be writing a character like this? And also in the way she was writing the character was kind of questionable to me. That's why it's a 4.5 out of 5. But this book is one of those books where you read the first chapter or the first paragraph and you're hooked. That was the same for Slewfoot. Immediate hook. I really cannot say anything about this book because it is a book where you wish you could read it again for the first time. After I finished it, I went back to the beginning and read the first sentence, and I was like, oh, it's already spoiled. There are so many plot twists in this book. You think you know the plot, and you didn't. And also another really cool thing about this book is one of the narrators is in the perspective of a cat. You guys should definitely read this book. I feel like this could also be classified as a weird girl book. Low-key. Anyway, Yes. His Black Tongue by Mitchell Lüthi. Okay, listen guys, it's a collection of stories, and I was not expecting a collection of stories, which was very sad because the first story was the best, and I genuinely don't remember any of the other ones. So I can just give a summary of the first story. It follows a priest and his apprentice, and they're kind of traveling around to different towns, casting out the evil in these towns. And that's kind of all I can say about it. I really liked the first story, but yeah. This next one was my last October read, and it is We Spread by Ian Reid. Do not read this book when you think you're gonna die. Like, for instance, I was reading this book when I was about to hop on an airplane to spend Halloween weekend with Kaylee in Virginia, and I was genuinely terrified for my life. I really thought I was gonna die, and I think the book played a role into it. But whoa, that almost fell. At least the beginning of the book is about a lady aging. I mean, obviously you're thinking to yourself the whole time, like, dang, this girl is about to die. So it kind of follows that perspective of someone who's expecting to die and someone who's aging for the purpose of death. The main character is a woman, and she starts kind of like losing her memory, and she gets sent to a home to be better taken care of because she's really getting into things and falling and such. In this home, it's very suspicious. There's a lot of weird things going on, and low-key it does bring in the question of what actually happens in these places. It kind of shines a light on the fact that the elderly community can easily be taken advantage of. We are in the month of November. The next book, easily a 5 out of 5 stars, Crazy Dangerous by Andrew Klavan. Okay, listen, me and my sister actually read this when we were younger, and I think we had no business reading this book because it really left a scarring effect on both of our memories. It actually was terrifying. Very scary. We didn't remember what this book was called, what the title was, anything really about it except like some parts of the plot, and I remembered what the cover looks like. But one day my sister randomly remembered it, and I immediately ordered it, and I'm so glad. It starts with a girl who is mentally unwell, and you kind of see her having hallucinations, paranoia, and the other main character of the book is a boy, and she thinks this boy is her savior because she becomes friends with him. He's the only person that treats her like a decent human, and when she's having these hallucinations, the thought of her having a friend saves her from these monsters. And through their two perspectives, it brings the whole story together. And on the boy's side, he actually is a preacher's kid, but he gets in the wrong crowd of friends, and you see the trouble that he gets into, and all the plot twists in the book are chef's kiss. This is actually a book that you need to read in October. I would want everyone to read this book. It is so good. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time I was reading this. Never a dull moment. I wish I could reread this again for the first time. Amazing book. Crazy Dangerous. Next book. Whoa. Mindfck. The Mindfck series. It has all the books in here. I've only heard raves about this book from my friends. It follows a girl that's a serial killer getting back at her abusers, and she starts dating a cop that's on the cases of this serial killer. And it really plays in her advantage, but then she starts really falling in love with this man, and she's forced with the question of why is she hiding herself from him? Because if he really loved her, he would accept her and like be on her team, even though he's a cop and she's a serial killer. And it's kind of crazy. I hated that it was morally gray. I just wanted something to get fixed. I hated the ending of it. When I read it, it kind of seemed so excessive to me. I was like, wow, this is definitely fiction. This does not happen in real life. I guess it was a good book. I don't know. I feel like people rave about it, and I just don't think I can hop on that. I don't think I can hop on the bandwagon, dude. Hello, guys. Different day, different animal. Sorry, my lighting is on a strict schedule. I'm just gonna pick up where I left off, and that was with Monster by Frank Peretti. This book is a book that has different narrators in the book, quite a few, but the main character is a girl. Her and her husband decide for vacation to do something that her husband would love to do, and that is go out in the woods and hike and kind of live the nitty-gritty life for a week. And this is a way out of this girl's comfort zone. Their first destination is to make their way to this man's home out in the middle of the woods. They make it to his home, and his home is in total disarray. But they're like, maybe this is like his way of life. You know, you never know. They decide to camp out and wait for this guy. It is during the nighttime, so they're spending the night outside, and they start hearing the monsters. Very scary sounds, very unusual, something that they've never heard before. That night ends with our main character disappearing. This man is actually a police officer with connections with detectives and forensic scientists. Some of the different narratives are from these detectives and forensic scientists. All their stories kind of tie together while they're really doing a search for this woman. And the evidence really doesn't add up. It's very unusual, nothing that they've seen before, and all based off of a speculation, a theory. But they really keep doing their search because they haven't found our girl's body. But all their evidence turns out to uncover a big scandal. It was an okay book. It was hard to finish, and it didn't really keep my attention. It's not really scary, but it's a spooky book. Last read of November, ladies and gentlemen, For Whom the Bell Tolls by Jaysea Lynn. This was another book club read. She's a thickie. This basically follows our main character. She is a woman, and she's gonna die. Follows her life after death, which is in the afterlife. And she either has the choice of reincarnating or staying in the afterlife. And it really follows her train of thought for what decision she'll want to make, and really hitting on different areas of herself that she didn't have time to figure out, and she didn't have time to come to terms with in her young age, because I think she died at like 30. Of course, while she's here in the afterlife, she does fall in love. This is a romantasy, not romantasy's biggest fan. She does fall in love with a demon, so he was born and raised in the afterlife, and he can't reincarnate. Yeah, that's basically what this story is about. Okay, guys. Jaysea Lynn, girl, you really did not need this many pages for this book. This author had a death grip on her characters and did not want to let them go. There was a point in the story where one of the characters could have been let go, and there would have been an amazing plot twist, and I was expecting that, and it didn't happen. I was like, so what what is the other half of the book then? And it was very young adult romantic-y type of book. I'll just say that. But I will say one of the characters that I really liked was Sharky, and she was the reason why I kept reading the book. The building of the afterlife was very interesting. I liked the ideas that she had. Like, the place that she lived in, her house had a personality, and the house was also one of my favorite characters. This was okay. And that was the last book for November. So now we're gonna get into December, and December is the month that I read literary fiction. Literary fiction is my girl. I don't know why it took me so long to stumble upon literary fiction. Once I did, I was like, I don't think I'll ever go back. I don't think I'll ever go back, guys. Never, ever. When I started reading literary fiction, I actually started writing down my thoughts for the books that I had. After I give my summary, if I think my thoughts are good enough, I will read them to you. I think I'll actually start off with our book club's book for December. The Likely Event by Rebecca Yarros. This is not a literary fiction, but it was my book club's book. This book is a romance. If you're familiar with Rebecca Yarros, you probably know her from her Fourth Wing series, which I am not the biggest fan of. I can talk about that for a minute, but anyway, even in this book, the way she wrote about like the military techniques and the military in general also bleeds into her romance book. This book follows two main characters, and it's separated into the past and the present. These two main characters meet on an airplane, and they kind of bond over the fact that they survived a plane crash. And their story is kind of like fate and chance. Suddenly, they're like running into each other, but they can never be together because my guy is in the military and he's active duty on deployment constantly, and the girl is just in school living an ordinary life. I feel like it just doesn't make sense for them to be together, even though each of them have the other in their head always. It just follows these fate by chance occurrences and ties it into the present day, where they're pretty grown adults, and the main character is engaged, the girl is engaged, the guy is on an active war zone. She actually came out as a politician, and of course they bump into each other by chance, and it just tells their story, their past, their chemistry, and ties it all together, and you figure out what becomes of them. We are now getting into the literary fictions. These are all the literary fiction books that I read in December. The Lost Estate by Elaine Fournier. This book follows two boys, and one of the boys is very ordinary, and the other boy is quite mysterious. This mysterious boy stays with this ordinary boy for the sake of going to school in his town. The ordinary boy kind of lives vicariously through this mystery boy, and one day mystery man disappears and is gone for a few days, and when he comes back, he tells his ordinary friend that he stumbled across an estate, and he doesn't really remember a lot about it, and at first he kind of keeps all this information to himself. So throughout the book it sprinkles in more information, but a main piece of information is that he met a girl, and really what's happening is he's longing to go back to find this estate and to find this girl. So him and his ordinary buddy, they kind of make a plan to go out and go find it again. But because of his fragmented memory, it takes a long time to come up with the perfect plan. I don't remember if they even made it. I think the mystery boy ended up just leaving and going back to his hometown because he just couldn't deal with the loss of this estate that he is yearning for. It's really taking a toll on him, and he's waiting for this girl. And eventually our ordinary boy goes to this town and he meets the girl. So immediately he goes to his friend and he's like, dude, I literally just met the girl that you've been yearning for all these years. His friend is kind of like, he's built up a resistance against the possibility of hopes shattering. So he's very hesitant to believe this until he goes back to the estate with his friend. And he does find the girl again, and you find out what happens. It's quite heartbreaking, actually. You don't really expect it to be. You kind of feel really like mythical and magical because it feels so nostalgic, but it ends in a very heartbreaking way. The author had an incredible capability of painting the scene for the reader because it felt like you were reading magic and it felt like you were lost in a fairy tale world. It also felt like you were in the book experiencing this with these boys, and I just think it's incredible when an author can create the atmosphere that they really want to portray to their readers. I do want to read my short little excerpt that I wrote about the book. The story felt like a roller coaster with a devastating end. The writing focused more on setting the scene rather than dialogue, which at first was hard to get into, but after reading seemed essential to capture the nostalgic feeling of lost childhood, which is a haze to remember specifics. Truly feels like the nostalgia of yearning for what's lost and can't quite understand, even if you find it again. Oh, another thing that I do want to add. This book, since it was my first literary fiction classic book that I read, I pulled out my notes app and wrote down quotes from this book because it was so beautiful. I wanted to be that girl who could quote books after this book. So then I knew literary fiction is for me. Talking at Night by Claire Daverly. This book follows two characters, a boy and a girl, who form a special connection as young teens, and things happen in this girl's life that really changes her, and it kind of unintentionally builds a barricade against this boy. And their lives kind of separate and take off in different directions. The girl goes to college, has a very depressing experience with that because she's dealing with a lot of emotions that she hasn't processed. And the boy, he doesn't go to college. All he wants to do is travel. It takes us through the lives of the difference between the boy's life and the girl's life. The girl dates the guy, just has flings. You know, their life continues on, but they both have each other in the back of their heads. The book brings you through their lives apart from each other and how each other's absences have a lasting effect in the rest of their lives. I really wanted this book to hit because what drew me in was it was described as grieving someone that's still alive but lost to you. I mean, I feel like that's pretty relatable, but the way the book was written wasn't quite relatable, at least for me, and I was quite disappointed by that. Honestly, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I think what I wrote was, I wanted this book to end as tragically as I would have thought, to somewhat put my own hopes to death. All the Lovers in the Night by Mieko Kawakami. Oh, this is an absolutely stunning book, guys. This book follows our main character, and she's a woman who is very distraught. She has a very depressing, anxious life. I don't know how to even describe this book to give it justice, but there is part of the book where she comes in contact with a man and she starts really falling in love with him, and through their conversations she starts facing questions that she's needed to heal from her trauma, and we as readers don't really even know what kind of trauma she has, which makes it so relatable to anyone. It was just amazing. I really cannot do this book justice by describing it. I think not everyone should read this because this is a very hard read. It touches on hard topics. If you're down, you will stay down from this book. And if you're up, your week might be ruined. The author has such a beautiful ability of creating the atmosphere that she wants the audience to feel. And this atmosphere was suffocating and anxious. It feels like you're not only reading this book, but you are part of this book. There are some gruesome parts, and it is very real. There is no happy or sad ending. It is very real. I loved this book so much that I'm gonna get a different copy of it, and I plan on reading this author's other books, Heaven and Breast and Eggs, and I'm quite eager to read those. Okay, when I wrote about this, I said incredible, exactly what I mean when I want to feel the writing in my soul. You can tell every word was written with intention. The atmosphere was so suffocatingly real. So lonely, so dissociated, so depressed, anxious. No happy ending, no heartbreaking ending. Real. If Cats Disappeared from the World by Genkai Kawamura. Okay. This book is about a man that is about to die. This man only has 3 days left to live, and the devil actually visits him and offers him a deal of living another day of life in exchange for something in that life to disappear. And it is the devil's choosing. This book just details the 3 days of this man making deals with the devil and showcases what deals were struck and the effects of those deals. And it affects the people that this guy loves the most, but he really doesn't care. Guys, I didn't really like this book, okay? There, I said it. I'll read what I wrote, and it is quite a rant. I feel like my summary has some spoilers, so if you don't want spoilers, just skip. I said, honestly, I think it's really about a selfish man who gives up things people love the most, people he supposedly loves the most, in exchange for another day of life. The thing he couldn't give up was cats because he was selfish. His first love loved movies, and he gave that up. His father loved clocks. It was his life's passion and a connection to his dead mother. He gave that up. But cats, he just couldn't give it up because that's what he liked. I get what the story was supposed to be about, but the story doesn't really drive that point home. It's supposed to be about realizing the importance of life and what really matters, and there'll always be regrets. But all I saw was an immature, selfish man, and the writing was weak and meant for immature, selfish men. There were so many points of existential crisis where the author could have dug deeper and written with the soul, but I felt nothing. He felt so much grief when his mother passed, but the words don't express that. No attachment to the story or the writing. Okay, I feel like that might have been intentional for the author to write such a disliked character. And I do think that the moral of the story is look at your life, see how you're living it. If you're selfish, fix it. Because how can you dislike this main character if you're doing the same thing in your life? But even at the end, when this point was really like driven in, it wasn't even satisfying at all. It was still, in conclusion, a very selfish man who doesn't care. The White Book by Hong Kong. First of all, this is such a beautiful book. This book is about grief. It's separated into different excerpts, all bringing the story together, but each title of that specific work, they all have one thing in common, and it's white, the color white. It follows the life of this young lady who deals with grief in her day-to-day activities. It's only a short book, but it took me a little bit to read this. I feel like I may not have really understood what the author was handing to me. I was not grasping. The grief in this book is very interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of a book written with this kind of grief. Maybe because I couldn't relate to it, I didn't really get it, but it was quite a tough read. It was very sad, and you could feel the emotion in her writing. And I feel like because it was a difficult read, something hard to swallow, I don't exactly remember. I do remember that I was amazed with the writing. It was so beautiful. I think this is a good summary. Pondering survival skill, death, and the fragility of life in day-to-day living. Living with the guilt of an absence that allowed life, the burden of it until death. My first NYRB, Stoner, by John Williams. I kind of got drawn into this book because it was described as a professor living with a lot of missed opportunities. This book was something that I did not expect, and it was a very pleasant surprise. I mean, this hits on love, loss, betrayal, unfulfillment, so many things, even like finances. It's crazy. It follows the life of Stoner, William Stoner. It's kind of a character study of his life, and really, if I told you about the book, it would take hours. I feel like this is so relatable to anybody. He really takes tough life situations, puts them into words seamlessly. If you feel alone in your life, try reading this book and you'll find comfort and company in your thoughts and emotions. This was an incredible book. I think everyone should read this. I don't even know how to describe this. I'll read what I wrote about it. I feel as though I can't describe this without doing it justice. A character study of a sad life of what could have been. You feel enraged with the character, but also feel so deeply connected to him through relation of experiences and feelings. This story touches on so many heavy topics. The human condition was put into such simplified descriptions that hit home. Truly an amazing book. I feel like everyone should read this. And it's true. The Rooftop by Fernanda Trias. This was a book about a woman who's extremely paranoid, and it really takes us through her life as a paranoid woman, living with her father and their daughter. Yeah, you heard that right. Her and her father's daughter. Yeah, she locks them up in their apartment because she does think something is out to get them, and she doesn't trust anyone. Something happens where she really starts spiraling, and things just really get out of control. Her father and her daughter's lives are deeply destroyed. But yeah, it was very interesting and honestly a little bit scary and disturbing, quite disturbing. This book is translated from Spanish. I feel like if I could have read this in Spanish, I would have loved this book so much better. I could feel myself closing in when I was reading this book. Like, I genuinely felt claustrophobic and anxious and paranoid. Again, I think it's a crazy talent when an author can build the atmosphere of the book. This was the last book that I read in December, and it is In the Cafe of Lost Youth by Patrick Modiano. This book was also quite a pleasant surprise because I thought it would be about lost youth, kind of similar to The Lost Estate, but it is completely different. The main focus of this book is this mysterious woman, and we read several people's different perspectives of this woman, including her own perspective of herself, and they each find her mysterious, and they're kind of fascinated with her. Through each of their stories, it all ties together and very vaguely tells us about this woman. Even her own description of herself is quite vague. It really questions the fact that even when people are fascinated with you and think they are close to you, they could be wrong. A sad story, I would say. Okay, let's read what I said about it. I wrote a mystery-like suspense story following the desire to escape from the past and its memories, only to be all consumed by said past as it becomes a part of you that can never be let go. So guys, that brings us to the conclusion of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it's the first video that I've made like this. Hopefully I did okay and do better in the future. I do love reading, and I've already read 9 books this year. I'm on my 10th, and it's only January 17th. No, it's January 19th. I plan on doing a January books video, and then after that I hope to do just like reading vlogs. Anyways, I hope you guys have a great rest of your month. Thank you for watching my video if you stayed this far. I never do outros, so